Welcome to this week's podcast. I'm here this morning with Tamar Challis, and we are moving through menopause. Tamar is a person-centered counsellor and coach, and she specialises in women's mental health and helping us as we move through our transitions. Welcome, Tamar.
Hi, Philippa.
Thank you for joining me today. I'm so excited to have a talk about menopause and how we manage the changes that are taking place. The who am I now question, it's been a big one for me. My children are at that stage where I've got one who's just disappeared off to university, and the second one is hot on his heels, COVID permitting. And so the empty nest has come just at the time when I have hit my menopause. And, it's a real, I'm finding it very challenging because my identity was very much tied up in rearing my children.
Yeah, it's very common amongst ladies who are going through the menopause. The timing is just when the kids are leaving home. A lot of my work is with ladies around their identity. We work on the physical symptoms and, emotional stuff, but a lot of it is, who am I now? I'm no longer birthing children. I'm no longer nurturing children. They don't need me anymore. And if they're still with their partner, that relationship changes as well. I'm no longer the mother of the children. Am I still the sexual partner? So there's an awful lot around physicality and the changes in the body that we just can't control during this time. It becomes quite difficult, I think, for some ladies to move through that, because sometimes body can become the enemy, because I'm no longer this young sexualized being. I'm no longer the nurturing mother. So what, and the weight that you gain, you kind of get what's known as barreling, which is where you get a lot of weight around the middle. So, even the most energetic and fit of ladies suddenly find this body is not doing what they expect it to do. Yeah, and so that reconnection of mind and body is quite a big thing.
Yeah, it definitely gets less cooperative.
Yeah, it certainly does.
That's what I found. Things that you used to just totally take for granted, being able to do certain things, balancing on one leg while you're putting on your pajamas, and you're hopping all around the bathroom or wherever you happen to be. Yeah, I mean, it is definitely less cooperative, and it's giving you messages that you didn't get before, creaking and grinding and painful sensations, perhaps, not to mention the hot flushes. For me, it hasn't been so bad, and even yet then that was bad enough.
Yeah, that's a really, really common symptom among the ladies, is the internal body temperature thing, because it can be so life limiting, especially if you're, still a professional lady trying to work in a professional environment, and suddenly you're having a physical meltdown where, there's sweat pouring off of you and you're trying to give a presentation or something. So there's an awful lot of shame and things and embarrassment around that as well, that I can't control my body, and yet I'm trying to be this professional lady. Even ladies that aren't in work, it's still quite a difficult time, perhaps in the supermarket paying for your shopping or whatever you happen to be doing, and suddenly you're pouring with sweat, even in the middle of winter. And, menopause it's getting better, but it just isn't really spoken about. I think there is a bit of a shift in workplaces. You're seeing things like menopause cafes, especially in larger organisations, and policies are starting to come into play where they write policies around helping staff that are going through this transition. But there's still a lot of embarrassment and shame around it where it's just not spoken about.
I mean, I suppose I was fortunate that teaching Pilates, I would, kind of make a joke about the fact that I kept putting my layers on and off and on and off. And that kind of was okay, because predominantly the audience is female, actually. So it's kind of, we're all in the same boat, or there's at least an understanding and appreciation of what that might be like.
Yeah.
Whereas if I can't imagine how hard that might be in a male-dominated environment.
Yeah, less understanding of you having to sit by the window, even moving office space, like the ladies of a certain age sit near the window where the windows are open with the airflow, and the younger ladies are all huddled around the heaters because they're feeling the cold, and you kind of have to shift the office depending on your staff at that time. But yes, male-dominated environments definitely seem to be the hardest. manage. Yeah,
I think this there's a kind of disconnect, isn't there, between the body that you once knew and this kind of imposter body.
That's a good word for it, imposter. Yeah.
So how, are there things that we can do to help ourselves with these kinds of shifts that are occurring?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, within sort of the counselling that I do, we do sort of practical things around, some of the symptoms. So obviously, so if we look at things like the diet, so there's sort of generic advice around, cutting down on sugar, alcohol, red meat and dairy, drinking an awful lot of water, eating more of a plant-based diet, so lots of colourful foods, things like that, because that's, you have control over what you can put into your body. There's a lot of research around at the moment about gut health and microbiomes. I think that's probably going to be really interesting to see how that research develops, because everyone has a very unique biome of their gut bacteria. And I think there's a belief that that leads into all kinds of illnesses. So if we can manage that gut bacteria, we can deal with a lot of these illnesses. So that's definitely something to watch.
Yeah, I think hacking the gut is definitely in the future. We're starting to understand its importance, but I do think we're quite a way off.
Unfortunately, yes. But yes, one to watch.
Sadly. Yeah. Oh no, it's definitely. I watch with. Definitely, I'm a keen observer of what's happening in that department.
Yes. Because if we can do it, if we can manage this stuff through the food we eat, we have so much control over that. And that definitely helps with people's mental health. I think the more control you have over everything, the better your mental health is. It's when the ladies feel out of control that they really struggle, and we get the depression and anxiety. Depression is worrying about things that have happened, and anxiety is worrying about things that could happen. So what we tend to focus on is what actually is within your control, and things like your diet is in your control.
Yeah, that's very true. That, this piece that you bring to the table is the thoughts piece of the puzzle, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. So we look at the diet and the sleep hygiene and things like that, and exercise, because obviously we talked about the disconnect from the mind and the body perhaps sometimes seen as the enemy, or it's betrayed me. And so the exercise can help sort of reconnect those things. So I often advise, yoga, Pilates, aerobic exercise. I do say that if you have aerobic exercise, then the fitter your body is, the easier you will find menopause.
Just to pick up on that, clearly, you're preaching to the converted here. As a Pilates and yoga teacher. And that's the thing I do love about both of those disciplines, really, is that we are constantly taking the mind and putting it into a part of the body. Might be your thigh muscles, say, for instance. It might be your bottom muscles. It might be your shoulder blades. But definitely making those connections with remote parts of the body, if nothing else, it takes you out of your head.
Absolutely. And a lot of the work is around reconnecting with yourself and becoming friends with your body instead of seeing it as an enemy.
Yeah, for me, the ability that you find new things that you are capable of doing. Don't shy away from trying new things, because that's something else that can really just help us to value our bodies. This capacity to, even if we tackle new things in midlife, our bodies have this capacity to adapt. And actually, the more we challenge ourselves, the more adaptation will occur. And that's really important when we're managing the tissue and the bone changes, say, for instance. But yeah, getting back in touch with your bodies, and then the feeling of wellness that comes from doing those kinds of things as well.
Yeah, because a lot of the symptoms of menopause makes you feel less than well, shall we say. So anything you can do to move back towards the well end of the scale is really good. And you talk about changes and creativity and things. A lot of the work we do is around identity and who am I now, because a lot of the ladies, the time the menopause comes, if you've had a family, it's the time that the children have grown up and left the house, as you've said. So we get the empty nest syndrome, the changes in the relationship with your partner if you have a partner. So I'm not the person perhaps that I was when we first met. And if you're having physical difficulties, especially with, obviously the far end of the scale is the vaginal atrophy, but problems sort of around the vaginal area and having sex, that changes your relationship, because you're not this young sexual couple that perhaps you were at the beginning. And so it's kind of working out who you are now and what those relationships look like now.
What kind of work would we do in order to kind of come to that place of understanding ourselves?
So this is, I guess, where the coaching comes in rather than counselling. So we do a lot of work on who am I now? And so we talk about your role. So you have perhaps role as mother, partner, daughter, sister, all these friends, all these different roles you have, and looking at perhaps what they were before menopause, and are they transitioning? Is there a change in that now? Is it a positive change? If it's a negative change, then is there anything, again, within your power that you can do to kind of redirect that? And a lot of it comes down to communication. So, talking to the people that you live with or the people that are around you about the changes that are happening with you and your body, what you're struggling with, perhaps what your triggers are. So, when this happens in our relationship, this is how that affects me, and this is how I respond to that. So it's about that open communication, I guess, as you would do with relationship counselling. I need to relate to you in a slightly different way. This is why and this is how. And it's about having that communication so that it doesn't break down. And that can happen in any relationship, with your children, with your partner, with your friends, with your work colleagues. And I guess that takes us back to the workplace about, I need to sit next to the window now because actually I overheat, or can I have a fan, or can we adjust the aircon? It's about that open communication and being able to sort of say what it is that you need and having those needs met.
That's definitely been a challenge for me. For some of this, it's kind of almost happening subconsciously.
Definitely.
So that the many maybe mood issues, you don't perhaps notice. It's sometimes a bit kind of creeps up on you that, that you're maybe more irritable, more anxious. Again, anxiety, unexplained anxiety comes about as part of this package. And
especially when you're premenopausal and you may not know it's the menopause yet, so you can't then communicate to the GP what's happening, so then you can't get that correct treatment.
Well, so I think that was the big thing for me, really, that this was all coming about way in advance of when I expected these kinds of changes to be occurring. So you're not necessarily putting two and two together, and you just think you're just in a really bad mood.
Yeah.
Or, and just be totally bemused as to why all of a sudden you're totally frightened of heights, or, these kinds of palpitations that I would get. And you'd be thinking, what's that
what
about?
on earth is going on? So this is the kind of thing that we bring into the counselling room and start unpicking. You sort of say, we talk about, I had this big fallout with my partner at the weekend. So, okay, let's pick at that a little bit. Let's take it apart and break it down. And you sort of work through what happens. And then as the counsellor, you can reflect back on the elements of what happened with that. And then it kind of helps the clients sort of come to that realisation and be able to manage this stuff themselves, going, okay, I'm feeling irrationally angry right now. What's triggered it? This is a trigger for me. And then identifying the triggers allows them then to work with that going forward. So, okay, this thing's just happened. I know that's a trigger for me, so I'm going to take myself out of the situation so I can calm down a little bit. And it's about becoming self-aware, I think, understanding what your triggers are, what your responses are, and working out how you can best manage those for yourself so you can do it in the moment.
Yes, that's the challenge, really, isn't it? And you're not going to win every time.
No.
It will get away from you on occasion, but this is really important work for people to do. And I lived in America for a while, for 4 years actually, and Americans are known for being this culture of analysis, aren't they? That everybody, well, I say everybody, but you know what I mean, that it's widely accepted, shall we say, that people would seek counselling, have a counsellor, and it's not perceived as a negative thing at all.
No, it's standard.
It's totally standard and part of self-development. And I actually embrace that approach. I think that counselling is about optimization. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be. No, you don't have to be
be at
broken.
crisis point.
Yeah.
It should be preemptive stuff, really. How I can be the best version of myself instead of waiting until everything's fallen apart.
And having that neutral third party, I always found, is very, very helpful. It is about finding the fit, somebody that you feel you can work with. But, and I am talking from experience, I'm not hiding that fact that, of having had counselling over the years for various things, various situations arising. But, I value that very much. And I think that it's so liberating, actually, to have this, you've got someone's undivided attention. They're not judging you. They're not, don't have any expectations of you, and they're there to help and support you. And I feel that this is really beneficial.
It is. And it does sometimes help to sit with someone who's not emotionally invested in your world, who can sit with you and say, it's okay to say no. It's okay to have a bad day. It's okay if you lost your rag, in that meeting. This stuff is okay. It's natural. It's going to happen. Let's learn from it and sort of work with that kind of stuff. I think sometimes it's having that neutral person just to go, okay, this is where we are now. This is where you want to be. Let's figure out how you're going to get there. Especially with the menopause, relearning who you are and perhaps becoming a new person. Because if that identity is gone, you have a blank page. You can be whoever you want to be. And so let's figure out who that is. So, we can get creative. A lot of the ladies, want to redecorate the house, rearrange things, change their physical world to reflect their changing internal world. It's a new stage of life. Let's try new things. I want to try dancing. I've never been able to go before. I never had the time. I've always wanted to try this skill, and it's about, I'm no longer the parent. They don't need me anymore. I have this whole life that I can fill with the things that I like doing. And a lot of the work we do is, what is it that brings you joy? What makes you happy? And let's bring some of that into the world. Instead of the daily grind and that I'm just trying to work with these symptoms, let's bring some happy into every day and figuring out what that looks like.
Yeah, definitely happy. Upbeat music. Take me to the 80s and I'll be very happy. I want to live forever. Flash dance, yes. I'll I'll be up there dancing.
It doesn't have to be huge changes. It can be the little things, like a song that you love. I do have to cook the dinner, but I'm going to dance around the kitchen while I'm doing it. And that, makes my heart light, because there's a lot of heavy work that goes on. We're going through a grieving process here. We're grieving the loss of who we once were. And so we go through the stages of the grief and the processing of the changes. But then the light at the end of the tunnel is, okay, so who will I be now?
I think the danger is, I say this not knowing, so correct me if I'm wrong, but we can get a bit stuck in that process. I lost a sibling when I was 17 years old, so I do know about grieving loss in that context. And yet this transition time, there's a risk that we're harking back to how things were, and so we can get stuck in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all about the process. And, I talk about life transitions. It is about transitioning from one place to another and not getting stuck in the quagmire of the grief that is there in between. It's important to feel this stuff, acknowledge it, process it and let it go. As we know from grieving lost ones, the grief never goes away. Our life just grows around that grief. So this is about growing our lives around this new person that we are. We're never going to be that 20-year-old, hard-bodied, bouncy girl that we once were, but actually we can be someone different. We can be a goddess. The mature, wise goddess kind of image is what I sort of go towards.
Yeah, I do resonate with that, actually. And I had just little things. This haircut of mine that I had 12 months ago, I'm celebrating 12 months ago. I went into the hair salon one day and in a moment of madness said to the hairdresser, just do what you think, do what you want. I'd had literally,
brave.
Yeah, I know. I'd had the same haircut since I was 15, for heaven's sake. I kid you not. well, variations on a theme, but the mid-length bob, I'd had it since time immemorial, and it's actually been massive. It's made
Yeah,
a massive difference to how I feel about, and it just sounds so shallow, doesn't
it's
it? But
symbolic though, isn't it? It's symbolic of a change within.
oh, okay. So symbolic. I feel better now. I know it's symbolic.
It's significant. It feels like not much, but it's symbolic of the change within. Yeah.
Yeah, and it really has given me a whole new lease of life. It sounds ridiculous. I also nipped into Boots one day, and this, like I say, this was a year ago, more or less. And I said to the girl, look, I have absolutely no idea what I do with makeup. I've been doing the same thing, like I said, for 20 odd years. What can I do? And so she gave me some really lovely tips that I now, incorporate into my regime. And again, just buying a new beauty product. What did she give me? It's something that goes under your foundation. I wish I could remember the name of it.
You're asking the wrong person.
Anyway, and just how to do the eyeliner. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But we're physically changing. Our faces are changing, our bodies are changing. So now is the time for the new haircut, a different kind of makeup, a new wardrobe, for our new shape. And it does give a refresh and a new lease of life. I talked about redecorating and reorganizing the house. We're doing the same with our new bodies. And again, that's about getting in touch with our bodies and making friends with it.
Yeah. And that does make us feel better about ourselves. Fresher.
Fresh look.
Yeah, definitely. And so, with a lift in the mood, we're more likely to be able to tackle some of these more challenging
Absolutely.
aren't we?
Yeah.
So I think this is a good time for us to think about winding up. And before we go, I'd like for us to summarize some of what we've talked about, and maybe self-care, how we look after ourselves through this transition. Some top tips, Tamar, if you have any.
Self-care is definitely the core of this, because as women, even if we don't have a family of our own, husband, partners, children, our tendency is to care for everyone else around us. This is the time we care for ourselves. We need us more than anyone else needs us right now. So focusing on the self-care, the food I'm putting into my body, the way I'm sleeping at night, the oils I'm using, I'm massaging, the exercise I'm doing, the mindfulness I'm doing, maybe the meditation I'm doing, the journaling, all this stuff around what I need right now and how I'm going to get through this transition. So focusing on self, being able to say no, being able to say, today was a bad day, and that's okay. Tomorrow I'll try again. This is the time we focus on ourselves and don't feel guilty about it. This is a really hard time for a lot of women. So look after ourselves, listen to that song if that's what we need right now. Tell everyone else to go away, shut the door, read my book. If that's what I need right now, that's what I'm going to do, because this is hard. So I think self-care is definitely the core of anything that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Give yourself permission to look after yourself, to put yourself to the top of the list today.
Yeah.
Definitely do that. And, all of these things benefit us in the broadest sense. So, right now with COVID, people are thinking, should we still talk about this menopause? But you know what? Life is going on. Our lives are going on, and we've got menopause to deal with as well. So, but it is the case that these lifestyle measures will impact us in our overall ability to deal with life, everything that life throws at us, and that includes viruses. So, keep yourself at the top of the list.
Yeah, and this is a good habit to get into, even when you're not menopausal. Generally, if we care for ourselves, the saying is you can't pour from an empty cup. Manage your self-care, get yourself to your, optimum levels of energy and everything, and then you can care for everybody else with the energy that you have from that. But you have to start with yourself.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Thanks so much for chatting with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah, and who knows, maybe we'll do it again.
Maybe. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.